Good morning. This is the seventh lecture in Unit 5 on land and water use. Today we're going to be talking about topic 5.10, aquaculture, and topic 5.8, impacts of overfishing. Basically, the impacts of overfishing are talking about describe the causes of and problems related to overfishing. And it's basically going to be any type of graphs or anything like that. So what happens when there's a fishery, that's a certain population of fish used for commercial fishing. What fishery collapses is where they fish and fish and fish until 90% of the population declines. In other words, they're economically extinct, where you cannot make money by fishing them anymore. The populations may never recover from this collapse because there's not enough biodiversity. They're so far apart within the ocean they can't find mates, and or because the ones that are left are from a family, there may be inbreeding, which causes problems. The decreases in biodiversity of fish populations and species biodiversity of the oceans, if the species are lost from the ocean, ecosystem, it causes a ripple effect with all the other species. The economic consequences is the fishermen have no income. If you're going to go fishing in that area as a tourist, those communities don't have that money anymore. So some of the economic impact in 1975 to 1985, there was severe overfishing. And because of that, you can see here, there was a sharp decrease in the amount of profits, huge profits between 75 and 85. But from then on, huge decrease because the fish were gone. Why? Because of the tragedy of the commons, which we've already talked about. Tragedy of the commons, multiple fishermen went out, didn't talk to each other. There's no incentive or penalty to prevent overfishing from this time. And so they fished and fished and fished, got rid of all the large ones. Well, those are the mommies and daddies, and therefore there's no babies, or very few babies. Another problem with fishing is something called bottom trawling. This is especially one of the most damaging fishing methods. And what it involves is dragging a net. You can see here, they just have a net down on the bottom, and they drag it, and there's a line across here where it's going to hit something, and it's dragging it along. What's going to happen is, one, they're going to catch the fish they don't want. In other words, they're going to catch dolphins, whales, turtles. That's not what they want, but they're going to catch them anyways. The other problem is you can actually see from the satellite images the plume of dust or mud that is going up. And you can actually see the increase in turbidity in the ocean. The other thing is it destroys everything on the bottom. The coral reefs, the rocks, everything. It decreases the biodiversity by killing non-target fish and removing habitats. The other problem is we generally go for the large fish. So the fisheries go for the things like Chinook salmon, tuna, sturgeon, and rockfish. As we deplete those predatory fish, there's none of them left. So we had to, if we're wanting to go for more fish, we go down to the next level. Then we deplete the smaller fish, and when we do that, it's not just affecting these larger fish, but what else is it? It's going to decrease the food for mammals and seabirds, which is going to cause a problem. Now, one of the things that has happened that's really been seen the last couple of years is with the sea otter. With the sea otter, it is going down, not because people are catching it, but because we're overfishing whales. Well, what does that have to do with a sea otter? Well, one of the things that eats whales are killer whales. Well, there's not enough whales for killer whales, And so what happens is they're going after the sea otter, and there's a huge decrease in the number of sea otters because of that. So practice FRQ 5.8, propose a solution to address the issue of fishery depletion. Can you answer that? Next one is 5.16. Maybe is this a way of going around this aquaculture? Notice how there's nets in here, and what happens is in here are tons and tons of fish. Maybe a different type here, or maybe all the same type. And what happens is boats come along and throw food, and you can actually see all the fish coming to the surface, and there are so many of them. They're so packed together. It's amazing. So the learning objective here is to describe the benefits and drawbacks of aquaculture. So again, aquaculture benefits: you raise fish, aquatic species in cages and enclosures underground, and you can get, if people want a certain type of tuna, you can grow in here, and that's the only thing that's grown in there. Requires a small amount of space, very little water, and very little fuel. And it reduces the risk of fishery collapse by, which means 90% of the fish, the wild fish, are gone. However, that's not affected because they're in an enclosure right here. It doesn't take up any land space compared to pork, beef, and chicken, because sometimes, for example, with carp, they are grown in little lagoons as an aquaculture. Some of the drawbacks of the aquaculture is the high density. They produce a lot of waste, which can cause problems to the fish that are in the surrounding areas. The high density, there may be disease, which causes the diseases to be shifted out to the outside. If we put in their genetically modified organisms, this is not 100%, secure. And so some of these GMOs may get out into the wild and contaminate those around them. When they're in here, they're sometimes fed antibiotics. Those antibiotics, well, hold it. Do you mean these nets are not solid? And so that those antibiotics can go out to the other fish or go out through the waste? Yeah, that can cause major problems with the surrounding fish. Now the practice FRQ for this: identify advantage of aquaculture over net fishing. Explain one environmental consequence of aquaculture.